She walked into the building with her head held high, dressed in her best suit and carrying nothing but hope, confidence, and a folder of neatly printed resumes. It was supposed to be the start of something new, a fresh chapter in her career. But the moment she stepped into that interview room, she could feel the atmosphere shift. The glances, the smirks, the dismissive tone. They hadn't even looked at her resume properly before deciding who she was. A few quick judgments based on her skin, her voice, her natural hair. And within minutes, she was out the door, not for lack of qualifications, not for anything she said, but simply because they had already made up their minds. What the interviewers didn't know, however, was that the woman they had just laughed at and brushed off had a connection to the very top, one that would soon leave them stunned. Because the man waiting upstairs in the corner office, the one signing paychecks and making final calls, wasn't just the CEO, he was her husband. This is a story about assumptions, dignity, and the quiet power of staying true to yourself. It's about a Black woman who faced discrimination in a place that claimed to offer equal opportunity, and how the tables turned in a way no one expected. As the truth slowly came to light, the same people who had mocked her were forced to face their own bias, right in front of the person they least expected to answer to. But just as the truth was about to be revealed, one unexpected twist changed everything. And what happened next left the entire office speechless. Her name was Maya, a smart, capable woman with years of experience in marketing and management. She had led teams, built campaigns from scratch, and helped small businesses grow into something bigger. But none of that mattered in that room. The moment she introduced herself, she noticed the panel's eyes barely lifted. They whispered among themselves, barely hiding their disinterest. One of them even chuckled under his breath when she spoke about her previous role. Another interrupted her mid-sentence, asking questions she had already answered on her resume. She tried to stay calm, holding her smile, answering every question with grace, even when the tone was cold and dismissive. But it was clear they weren't really listening. And soon one of them stood up, casually thanked her and said, "We'll let you know," without shaking her hand. She walked out, heart pounding, holding back tears. On her way down the hallway, she heard faint laughter from behind the door she had just left. That was when she knew they never gave her a real chance. What they didn't realize was that Maya hadn't told anyone her last name. Not because she was hiding something, but because she wanted to be seen for her skills, not for who she was married to. Her husband, Jordan, the CEO of the company, had always supported her independence. He respected her need to earn things on her own. They had agreed she wouldn't mention their relationship during the process. Back in his office, Jordan had no idea Maya had already been interviewed, all thrown out. He was busy reviewing final hiring decisions when a strange comment from one of the team members caught his attention, something that didn't sit right with him. And that's when the pieces slowly began to fall into place. Jordan sat at the head of the table, flipping through the short list of candidates his hiring team had provided. Names, credentials, notes scribbled in the margins. But something felt off. One of the managers, Greg, casually mentioned that one candidate just wasn't a good culture fit. No explanation, just that. Jordan paused. He looked up and asked, "Which candidate?" Greg hesitated before describing the woman. Confident, black, wore her hair natural. Said she came off too bold and didn't seem like she'd mesh well with the team. Jordan's stomach sank. He didn't show it, but he already knew. That had to be Maya. She had told him she had an interview that morning, but didn't say it was at his company. She wanted a fair shot, no special treatment. But now he realized she had been judged, not on her experience, not on her merit, but on appearances and assumptions. And the worst part, the team had laughed about it, disregarded her, not knowing she was married to the very person they were trying to impress. As the day went on, whispers started around the office. One of the assistants who had seen Maya come in earlier that morning noticed the photo on Jordan's desk, the same woman, smiling in a park, holding his hand. A quiet buzz spread. People began to piece things together. but no one dared say it out loud. Meanwhile, Maya sat at home, still shaken. She hadn't told Jordan what happened. She didn't want to seem defeated, but she couldn't shake the way they looked at her. Like she didn't belong, like she was invisible. What she didn't know was that Jordan was already starting to dig deeper into the interview notes, watching the recorded session, and noticing just how quickly the panel dismissed her. Something wasn't adding up, and he wasn't going to let it slide. Jordan stayed late at the office that evening, long after most of the staff had gone home. He couldn't get what Greg said out of his mind. Not a culture fit. It echoed in his head like a warning bell. He opened the interview recording on his screen, fast-forwarded to the moment Maya walked in. His heart clenched when he saw her, calm, poised, clearly prepared. He watched as she introduced herself, only to be cut off. The body language, the smirks, the way one of the panelists scrolled through his phone during her answer, it all made his stomach turn. This wasn't just a bad interview. This was disrespect. Meanwhile, in the break room the next morning, quiet conversations buzzed among the employees. People had started putting the puzzle together. Some were in shock. Others were nervous, wondering what would happen if the CEO found out what really went down. One junior staffer even overheard a manager trying to get ahead of the story, saying things like she didn't seem serious, and it was just a misunderstanding. But it was too late. The air in the office had changed. Tension hung heavy in every meeting, every hallway. Back at home, Maya was still holding back. She didn't want to make Jordan feel stuck between being a husband and a boss. But that silence was eating at her. Finally, she typed out a message, not to complain, but just to say she was disappointed in how the interview had gone. She hadn't even hit send yet. At the office, Jordan had called an emergency meeting with the interview panel. No one knew why. When they entered the room and saw the interview playing silently on the screen, every face went pale. He didn't say a word at first. He just let the footage speak for itself, and the room fell into an uneasy silence. Right before everything began to unravel, the room stayed silent as the video played out. Every awkward glance, every dismissive laugh, every moment they ignored Maya's words. Jordan leaned back in his chair, arms folded, eyes scanning each of their faces. No one dared to speak. Just when it felt like he might finally explode, the HR director walked in, holding a folder. She looked rattled. "I think you need to see this," she said quietly, handing Jordan a printed email. He read it once, then again, jaw tightening with each word. It wasn't just Maya who had been treated unfairly. Turns out, this wasn't the first time. 2 other candidates, both women of color, had been interviewed and similarly dismissed over the past few months. Their files had been quietly marked not suitable, with no real feedback. It was a pattern, and no one had said a word about it. Until now. That changed everything. This wasn't just about Maya anymore. It was bigger, deeper. Something inside Jordan shifted. He had worked hard to build a company that stood for inclusion and integrity. But somehow, right under his nose, a culture of quiet bias had taken root. And now he was looking at the very people he trusted to lead. Greg cleared his throat, trying to explain. "It's not what it looks like, sir. We're just trying to protect the company culture. Professionalism." But Jordan's stare cut through him. Professionalism. That was the excuse. As tension filled the air, another twist hit. Someone in the room had leaked Maya's identity. One of the panelists had sent a private message after the interview, mocking her and hinting she was too confident for someone not even connected. But the message had bounced straight to Jordan's executive inbox by mistake. Now it wasn't just about the interview, it was personal, and it was about to get even more serious. Jordan stood up slowly, the leaked message still in his hand. He walked to the center of the room and placed the paper on the table without a word. The panel leaned in, reading the line that had accidentally landed in his inbox, a cruel comment, mocking Maya's confidence, followed by a laughing emoji. The room went still. One of the managers turned pale, realizing it had been sent from his account. There was no talking their way out of this now. "I gave you the responsibility to build this team with fairness," Jordan said, his voice low but firm. "And instead, you brought your personal bias into this company, my company. You looked at an accomplished, intelligent black woman and decided she didn't belong, not based on merit, but on appearance and assumptions. And now I find out this isn't even the first time." No one replied. The weight of his words hung heavy in the air. That afternoon, a formal HR review was launched. 2 senior team members were suspended pending investigation, and an internal audit of past interview rejections began. Jordan made the decision himself, stating clearly that "we don't protect prejudice here, we correct it." He went home that night and finally sat with Maya, holding her hand as she told him everything. The tears she held back, the feeling of being unseen. He listened, not as a CEO, but as a husband, and promised her it would not be in vain. But just when things seemed to settle, the final twist came. One of the rejected candidates reached out to Maya directly after hearing her story. She revealed that she, too, had once been rejected unfairly, but was now part of an investigative journalist team working on a piece about corporate discrimination. She wanted to talk, not just about what happened, but about making it public. And suddenly, Maya realized her story might be just the beginning. Maya met with the journalist a week later, not for revenge, but for something bigger, to use her voice. She shared her experience honestly, along with the emails and details that proved this wasn't an isolated case. The article was published soon after, and it quickly gained attention. Readers from across the country shared their own stories. Some were shocked. Others weren't surprised at all. But the conversation had started, and it wasn't slowing down. Inside the company, changes followed. Jordan took full responsibility for the culture that had quietly formed under his watch. He brought in outside consultants to lead diversity training, rewrote hiring policies, and created an anonymous reporting system. It wasn't just about fixing one bad interview, it was about making sure no one else felt what Maya felt that day. As for Maya, she didn't take the job. Not there, at least. She received offers from other companies who saw her worth right away. But more than that, she found peace in knowing she'd stood tall, even when others tried to diminish her. Her story wasn't just about being mistreated, it was about rising, being heard, and holding people accountable. One afternoon, she and Jordan sat together on their porch, watching the sun dip behind the trees. "It's strange," she said quietly, "how something so painful can end up creating real change." Jordan nodded, squeezing her hand. Sometimes the hardest moments open the biggest doors. In the end, Maya's journey reminded everyone that strength isn't just about speaking loud. It's about knowing your value, even when others try to ignore it. And for anyone who's ever been underestimated or overlooked, her story is proof that your worth isn't defined by someone else's perception, it's defined by what you know to be true.